Next, we will dive into the important concept called the evaluation context. It plays an important role with the usage of a function called calculate. The calculate function is one of the powerful and hard to learn function in DAX. Anyhow, before we dive in to understand the DAX on the calculate function, let us first understand the evaluation context. What is evaluation context? The environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated. That is what your evaluation context. This I already discussed with you all. Even just a while ago, I discussed about this. I'm going to remove all these things and I just repeat the same thing again. Look here. Here, what is the total sales? We will take with a simple example. I just click on this measure. This measure I created it already. Total sales, sum of this function. I know, right? I took the sum on this sales column, and then I just dragged and dropped it inside my table visual. I can see that the total sales was 29 lakh 22,000 and odd. Okay, and here the okay, in this case, what I do is I just drag the another text column here, not the country. You will take a simple column, the category again. I just remove this slicer for the time being. I don't need it now. Okay, and if I select this visual, and I want this category column to display first, for that I just come here, I just move this up, and this is my category and total sales. See, initially, how many of you noticed this one? Initially, it was showing some value here. For example, here. So this is the moment when I drag and drop it, the total sales, it shows only one value here. For all these categories put together, what is the total sales? Okay, in this case, what I did, I just did the aggregation or summarization using a sum function on the sales column. It takes the entire value of the sales column and it did the total and gives me the total sales here. But here in this case, it gives me only one value. The same thing happened here also, but along with this total sales, if I drag and drop any categorical value or any text column, it did this split automatically. Out of this total sales, how much total sales we made in each and every category. For this, we did not write any DAX function, isn't it? For each category, compute the sum of the sales. Did I write anything? No, right? All I did was just total sum of sales on the total. That's all. It was giving just this one, 1,13,000 and odd. But the moment when I dragged and dropped the category column, it automatically goes and filters the category table, dimension table, filters the sales fact, the sales tables, sales column, and it applies the sum on the furniture related records. Right? It automatically does. How it is possible? Because of the relationship. In this case, okay, we have only one table, right? Within this table, we are doing it, right? It is automatically doing the split up. Okay. So this is possible because of the environment, the evaluation context. Okay. So, okay, I just use another, okay, in this visual, what I do is I just take segment here. The same thing is happening here. The moment I drop a text column, in this case, it is a segment column. So here it is a category column. Now it is segment. Forget about the first one. There is some blank value here. We will take a look at it later point in time. At this one, let's not break our head. The consumer corporate home office. So out of the total sales, how much sales we made in each segment. It gives me the sum of sales split by segment. Here, sum of sales split by category. Okay, but I have used the same measure in both the visuals. Totals is the same measure, right? Total sales, the same measure. I used it in both the visuals. But we are getting different values for each row. This is different and this is different. This is different. How is this possible? In these two visuals, we did not specify in the DAX formula anything in relation to the category or segment, wasn't it? All we wanted was the total sales amount. That's it. But for each row, we get different values, though the total sales value is same. So how do we get different values on each row? This is because of the evaluation context. Because of the evaluation context. The environment in which a DAX formula is evaluated. Okay. There are two types of evaluation context. The one is the row context and the other one is filter context. Before evaluates the DAX formula, it applies the evaluation context in two parts. Okay, the evaluation context consists of two parts. The first one is the row context. The second one is filter context. There are situations where they coexist and they are present for all the formulas. See, in some cases in the DAX measure, you will be using most of the time, right? We use filter context in the DAX measure. Sometimes you'll be using row context. Can I use the combination of these two in my measure? Yes, that is also possible. That is what I meant. Okay. Now we will take a look at the row context. Right, there are three query context. You can ignore it. Anyhow, we will continue with the row context. We'll start with the row context. Calculator column. We already discussed. The calculation is done row by row. This is what, as part of evaluation context. Remember the two important context, row and filter context. The calculator in the case of row context, in the case of calculator column, the calculation is done row by row. When you define a calculator column, the DAX creates a row context automatically. Or by using the iterating DAX functions like sumx, we can create a row context programmatically. Okay. The row context is evaluated whenever an expression iterates over a table. You need to remember this. So for example, right, in our case, to calculate the sales amount, the quantity should be multiplied by the list price in a new calculator column to get the sales amount. So let's say if I have a table with 10,000 rows in it, okay, that expression, the list price into quantity, will be evaluated 10,000 times, once for every row in a table, each with a different row context. If you remember this, this is more than sufficient. That is what I mentioned here. But row context does not propagate through relationship automatically. Row context exists in a calculated column or iterating. So these things, certain things you need to remember it. But anyhow, I explained you with some examples so that you don't have to memorize. But there are certain things you need to remember it. Okay. This is the one. Row context iterates the table, but it does not do filtering. This is what you need to remember it. Okay, the next one is the filter context. Okay, before that, to summarize the row context is evaluated whenever an expression iterates over a table. In simpleton, one-liner, that is the statement for row context thing. The next one is the filter context. This is the one is the most important thing, right? Measures are evaluated based on filter context, which means that they have recalculate when fields or filters or changes around them. Whenever I make any changes in my slicer, this one gets the filter is getting applied here. So whenever a measure is calculated, right, filter context is used. It's kind of a set of filters applied to your data model before evaluating a DAX situation has been started. Okay. For example, in this case, right, so we have a measure, total sales, that sums the sales column in our sales table. Let's suppose that you want to see what the total sales by category or by segment, right, for each location, right, for each category and for each the segment, it sums the total. So in this case, the filter context is used whenever a measure is calculated. Filter context is used. See, the furniture filters, this category column, literally it filters your sales values, and then it does this. And filter context is used whenever a measure is calculated. One or more applied in a calculation to determine a value. The measure is used in visualizations, right? So the filter context, is used in your visualizations. Supposing I have I just create the slicer again. Okay, this time I just drag and drop the segment. Look here, when I select the consumer and home office, so consumer and home office related values got filtered here. And also you can see that, right? So the each category as a segment, and now the total sales got changed here also. It applied the filter here. Okay. So it is a set of filter count is nothing but set of filters applied to your data model before evaluation of your DAX expression. Okay. So according to us, we have used the total sales measure. Before executing this measure, it checks what context is a row context or it is a filter context. So for example, in this case, in the measure itself, I have used the SumX. SumX function, using SumX function, you can perform row by row calculation as part of your measure. So using calculated column, we have what we did, list price into quantity, it gave us the sale amount. But here, to perform the same, see the calculated column is meant for row by row context, wasn't it? That's what I told. And can I do the row by row context using measure? Yes. In general, measure is meant for filter context only, but it is also possible to perform row context and filter context using measure. Okay, and the filters context can be applied using visuals in your using visuals and DAX also. And now let's go back to the PowerPoint and see. Filter context has the following source of filter: row selection, column selection, filter selection, slices selection, matrix visual based on row and column data fields. Okay, I just show you this one. I just clear this one. When I select this row, for example, office supplies. Look here, in the office supplies, within the office supplies, in each segment, what sales we made. Okay, that is what it tells us. Row selection. Filter context as the following is row selection. In this case, I selected this row, specific row. If I select technology, note down this value. If I click on this row, technology, look here, this visual, right? It applies the filter relevant to technology on the other thing, not only slicer. Using slice, don't think only using slicer only we can apply the filter, but you can apply the filter using the visual itself. Okay, this is called a row selection. It's the row selection, and you can, in this case, we have only two columns. For example, I just go and drop the segment in this column in this one. I just convert the matrix instead of a table. I just convert the matrix. And if I select this value, look here, I just selected this column. Or if I select corporate, look here, corporate related values getting filtered, right? That is what. So see the filter, it's filtering it. When you select the column, it filters. When you select the row, it does the filtering, right? In matrix visual, based on row and column, Data fields, it applies a filter. Also, you can use a slicer. Apart from this row and column selection, you can use a slicer to filter the data. That is what it says. The filter context as the following source of filter: row selection, column selection, matrix, filter selection, and slicer selection. Now we will take a look at this simple example. With this, I'm going to wrap up because I don't want to dump many things in a single session. Tomorrow, please cooperate with me, bear with me. Tomorrow we'll spend 2 hours to cover maximum thing in the interest of, because I could understand the weekend you guys are busy, right? So the earlier if I finish it, you can spend time with your personal thing, right? So look here. Now the question is here. Look at this. This is my table visual or matrix visual. So what is the initial filter context? This particular cell. This highlighted value 7986. What kind of context? Is it a row context or filter context? In this case, I just mentioned, a friend, initial filter. What is the initial filter context for this cell? For this highlighted value, 7986, it has a filter context for the city Hyderabad. Okay. The initial filter context for the highlighted cell is only come from the rows, in the matrix from location Hyderabad. When you select Hyderabad, this one will get selected. The highlighted value has a filter called the city Hyderabad. That's what I mentioned here. This is what your initial filter context. And the next one is, how, for example, if I select a location, specific location in my slicer, or if I have something like, yeah, so in this case, the location sales amount, how the filter context is happening, that is what I explained it here in detail. So you have a location table. This location name comes from location table. This comes from your sales table. In this case, what happens is, how it applies the filter is, in your location table, let's say you have data in two different tables. Location is separate table and sales is separate table. And in this case, what happens is first selects the Hyderabad, because you selected only Hyderabad record, and the corresponding Hyderabad record will get filtered in your sales table. All the Hyderabad related records will get selected, and then it applies the sum on this one. It sums all these values automatically behind the scene. All we did was just we select, for example, here, when you select Hyderabad, just if you click on Hyderabad, it will show you something like this, right? Or if you select this value, or let's say instead of saying this way, let's say you selected Hyderabad, right? So for this, the initial filter context 7986 Hyderabad, and how it arrived this value, because what behind the scene what happens is, this location table, it filters your sales table by Hyderabad. It filters all the Hyderabad records in your sales table, and then it applies the sum on this, and then it gives you 7986.70. So the initial filters on this cell is Hyderabad, and behind it is the filtering is happening because of what? The relationship between the tables. Okay, you need to have the relationship between the tables. Now you tell me what is the initial filter context for this particular cell. For this cell, the intersecting values, right? Hyderabad and dairy. For this highlighted cell, it has a filter context for the location Hyderabad as well as the product category of dairy in this case. That is the initial filter context. And next one is a little bit different. Look here. Along with the matrix, I have used the slicer here. Now you tell me what is the filter context. Here the highlighted cell shows 200. So it has a filter context for location Bangalore and the product category of dairy and the month August. This is your, let's say, internal filters. When you select, let's say if I click on Chennai, it will show this Chennai related data here, right? Total says everything. And then August. In August month, what is the sales in Chennai or Bangalore? If you want to say it, right? So first, when I select the Chennai, what happens? Each and every column, what is the sales? It will get computed, it will display it here. It does the split up. But before doing this, before it performs this action, it checks the evaluation, whether it's a filter context or row context. In this case, it is a filter context because in this I selected this row, or I selected Bangalore. So what happens in the Bangalore? What is the total sales in ice cream? Before blindly computing the total sales in ice cream, it goes and checks any external filter is there. Yes. In addition to that, so filter the entire data by Bangalore. Remember here, I'm talking about this one, Hyderabad. It filtered. Similarly, when you select Bangalore, you don't have to select it. Or in the slicer, when you select the Bangalore, or when you select the city name here, when you click on this, you are selecting it. It's kind of filter. It computes the total sales for these two products automatically. But before doing this, it goes and checks, are there any other external filters? Okay, don't compute the total sales for ice cream and shampoo in Bangalore. Instead, for the August month, what is the total sales we made in ice cream and shampoo in Bangalore city? Right? So in this case, what happens? It goes beyond the filter context goes beyond the rows in the matrix, right? And in addition to the matrix, it goes by the slicer also. This is how it works. Behind the scene, this is what is happening. What do you mean by filter context? How many types of filter contexts are there? What do you mean by, let me see how many of you can answer it. What do you mean by filter context? So this is the answer. When we are applying the filters on the set of values of columns or tables using DAX calculation, that is known as filter context. In a DAX expression, which one will execute first, filter context or row context? This is a very interesting question. First, right, the filter context apply on top of other context. First, the filter context will get applied right on top of other contexts such as row context and query context. Okay. So filter context is a type of evaluation context. True or false? Filter context type of, yes, it is part of evaluation. That's what we discussed. What is applied as part of the filter context? Rows, columns, slicers, and filters, and on-screen visuals, calculate functions. So far, we have seen rows, columns, and slicers. What is applied as part of filter context? Rows and columns. Supposing if I select this technology, the filter context applied here. This is filtering, right? It filters the records related to this. Filter context. The row context you know very well. In the calculated column, it does the row by row calculation. But here in this case, the filter context is happening by row in this case. And supposing you in row select, for example, I want to select office sales, and in the consumer, what are the sales? Right? In this case, automatically what happens? I just selected office sales. What happens is in consumer and office sales, what is the total sales we made? In corporate segment, office supplies category, how much sales we made it. So here, for this value, the filter context is office supplies and consumer. For this value, the filter context is corporate and office supplies. You got it? So row and column, that's what we've seen. Rows and columns applies the filter. Filter context, nothing but filter here. That's all. Okay, it is applying the filter on this one. And along with this, we have seen this slicer. When I select this one, for example, consumer, okay, or if I select corporate, in office supplies in corporate, how much sales we made something. Or you can use month slicer for August month. What is the sales we made in these three segments, especially under this category? You can so you can apply the filter context using rows and columns in a matrix plus slicers and filters. This and all we'll see tomorrow. What is the difference between implicit and explicit filter context? When in the DAX calculation, you have not declared filters explicitly. That is what called your implicit measure. For example, here I have shown you just next to this, say the sales or other numeric value, you will find the sigma notation. This is your explicit measure, implicit measure. Okay. Okay, this is the effect of DAX implicit filter context. Okay, explicit filter context means in calculation. See, this what the total sales is equal to sum of sales amount. This is the explicit. We have defined it. All right. So in this case, we have not declared any filters explicitly. The value will be different based on any dimension field selection. This is the effect of DAX implicit filter context. What is query context? A combination of row and filters create the final query for DAX, and you can define this as a query context. That's all, right? So when you use a filter context or when you use a combination of these two, it creates the final query for DAX. And what is applied as per the filter context? And these are the questions. Okay, what we will do is tomorrow we will continue with this one. Is it possible to use the filter context along with the row context? Okay, this is very interesting one. I'll demonstrate you in tomorrow's session. Any questions as of now? Okay, you watched my video, and